Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more interesting stories like these. Now, let's get into today's story video. AITA for calling the police on my fiancé. My fiancé, 28 male, and I 30 female, have been together for 3 years. I used to live close to work and took public transportation, but after moving into his house, which is hours away from work, I bought myself a car because I'm a nurse and there aren't any hospitals nearby where we live where I could transfer. My fiancé's automobile hasn't been running for about 2 months. It costs a lot of money to repair it, and he declined my financial assistance when I offered it. Instead, he'd ask to use my vehicle every now and then, and I'd accept as long as it was when I wasn't working, and he just used it for visits to the groceries, etc. On New Year's Eve, he asked to borrow my vehicle to go out with his friends and celebrate, but I denied since I had a night job and needed my car to go to work. He pushed, even suggesting that I take the night off or exchange shifts with another nurse, but I couldn't do that at the last minute. I thought he dropped it then, but when I got out of the shower and looked around, I couldn't find him or my car, so I freaked out and started calling for half an hour, but he didn't answer. So I tried again until one of his friends picked up. I demanded he give the phone to my fiancé, but he said they were out and confirmed that he took my car and told me that my fiancé said it's better if I skip my shift until I couldn't take it anymore. I was so enraged that I called my fiancé and told him I didn't consent for him to take my car to go hang out with friends and that if he didn't come back with it, I'd call the cops. But he didn't take me seriously, so I ended up calling the cops, and he and his friends were picked up at the bar where they were hanging out, then taken to the police department. My fiancé was let go hours after I left, and he blasted up my phone with missed calls and messages about how I was insane to call the cops on him and put him in this predicament. I didn't respond, but when I got home from work the next day, we got into an argument, and he said he couldn't believe I'd done this to him, but I told him he made me do it, to which he responded that I was petty and callous because not only did I ruin his New Year's celebration, but all of his friends aren't speaking to him after I put them in this situation as well, and he then kept giving me silence about it. I consider this to be theft since he went behind my back after receiving a no from me, but he was startled I'd even suggest that he was a thief and claimed that what's yours is mine and vice versa, so I shouldn't be using the phrases theft and stealing. Story 2. AITA for scheduling a doctor's appointment without telling my mom and then expecting for her to pay for it. My first period occurred when I was 12 years old. I am now 17 years old, and it lasted around 2 weeks. It was brought to my mother's attention, and she advised me that experiencing unusual and irregular periods during the first 2 years of pregnancy was normal. A few months later, when I went in for my yearly physical exam, my doctor told me the same thing. Okay, I'll just put up with screwed up periods for a couple of years and see how things go. It's not a big deal at all. My periods have been irregular for the last 2 years, despite the fact that I'm 14 years old. They last on average 3-4 weeks and only emerge 2 or 3 times a year, depending on the location. I tell my mom that I've been pregnant for over 2 years and that my periods are still erratic. I've decided that I need to see a doctor about it. She assures me that her periods were the same until she had children and that I have nothing to be concerned about, but she will make an appointment for me if I honestly want to see a doctor. Despite my instructions, she failed to produce one. When I tell my doctor about it a few months later, at my yearly physical exam, he immediately recommends me to a specialist, provides my mother with the phone number, and orders her to schedule an appointment. My mother agrees, but she never follows through on her promises. Every couple of weeks, I remind her to schedule an appointment, and she always pledges but never follows through on the commitment. We're still reminding her 3 years later, and she never seems to remember to make a reservation. My menstrual periods are still several weeks long and spaced many months apart. She had lost the phone number for the expert. When I press her to make a plan, she always tells me that her periods were the same as mine and that she has nothing to be concerned about, but she always promises me that she would make a plan as soon as possible. It's something she's never done before. As a result, a few days ago, I called a local specialist I had identified online and scheduled an appointment with him. As a result, I notified my mother, who became enraged and demanded that I pay for this appointment myself since I had failed to notify her of its existence before booking it. It is not a matter of money at all. She just assumes that since she coped with similar difficulties as a youngster, mine are trivial in comparison. In fact, she's the same way about every health condition I've ever had, even ones she hasn't experienced herself. It took me almost 2 years to convince her to allow me to visit a therapist for my depression. I notified her many months ago that I suspected she was suffering from a UTI. After donating blood, I received a letter alerting me that my ferritin levels were concerningly low and that I should visit with my healthcare provider. None of this is sufficient to convince my mom to schedule an appointment with a professional. For trying to take issues into my own hands, I received an AITA. To answer a few queries, my father will not do anything that would be in conflict with my mother's wishes. I've tried to convince him to help me in a situation concerning her, but he's been adamant about refusing. Regarding the insurance problem, I'll call the office first thing in the morning tomorrow to inquire, since they'll be closed for the weekend. Thank you very much to everyone for your assistance. Update 1. For those who are curious, I had to cancel the appointment since my family's health insurance did not cover that clinic. I've asked my mom one last time to make me an appointment with an OB/GYN, since clearly creating my own didn't work out, and if she doesn't get back to me soon, I'll call the Planned Parenthood chapter in my region. Thank you all so much for your advice and help. I really appreciate it. Update 2. I offered my mom one final opportunity to arrange me an appointment with a gynecologist, so she could choose a doctor that accepted our insurance and was easy to get to, as several commentators mentioned on my previous post. I think it simply took a strong wake-up call for her to finally get me the treatment I need, since my first visit was in July. My mother informed me on the way to that appointment that she had PCOS, but didn't tell me since she didn't believe it was a problem for me. I know I mentioned PCOS in my earlier article, and several people in the comments recommended it as a possibility and related their experiences with it. PCOS stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome, which means that the brain sends signals to the eggs in the ovaries, causing them to develop and mature into cysts numerous at a time rather than one at a time, as would occur in a healthy system. After I explained my symptoms to my doctor and mentioned my mother's PCOS, she informed me I had a high likelihood of having PCOS and a probable case of endometriosis. She arranged a follow-up visit for an ultrasound to examine whether I had ovarian cysts, which is the most common cause of PCOS. During that meeting, it was verified that I had many cysts, some of which were very big. My ovaries are roughly 4 cm across, and one of the cysts in my right ovary took up nearly a fourth of that size. My left ovary had the distinctive ring of pearls appearance, which means the cysts all formed around the border of my ovary to give the appearance of pearls. Essentially, the doctor advised me to use Corriva birth control as the best alternative for me and the preservation of my ovaries. My mother was opposed to the concept of my having a get-out-of-jail-free card, but my father persuaded her that it was the best alternative. As many posters advised, I spoke to my father more about my mother's medical neglect of me when I was a child, and he was better about fighting for my health with my mother. Thank you for your assistance and suggestions, everyone. Edit. My mom's get-out-of-jail-free card was alluding to the fact that my medicine can be used as birth control, since she doesn't trust me not to go out and sleep with half the town now that I'm on BC. She didn't mean that in the sense of you don't deserve treatment, but rather you deserve to become pregnant if you ever have. As if it were the only thing holding me back. I'm not sure whether it's one or the other.